All right, pjnet.tv. Time for part two. It's 9:30 on the East Coast, Thursday night, February the 11th. And got our bumper running. We've got the recording turned on. We've got the streaming turned on. And everything looks like it is in sync. And JD is waiting in the green room, and the chat room is sure waiting on everything else. So let's start a countdown to Studio 13. All right, good evening and welcome back. pjnet.tv. Hey, I've changed shirts. I've changed my hair shorter. You know, I could say I've lost some weight, but I haven't. But I will later. Folks, it is Thursday night, and I always look forward to Thursday night because that is the night we take a trip around the Cross W Ranch in Cooper, Texas, and no one better to be our tour guide than the caretaker, the curator, the CEO, the manure shoveler, JD himself, and he is waiting for us. And JD, we're talking off the air, seriously, and we'll take as much time as we need. One, happy birthday to your dear wife.
Oh, yes, sir.
Yeah. That's a birthday celebration.
She's years old today. How about that?
Yeah. And she just logged into pjnet.tv in the chat room. Folks, by the way, if you're watching this on Facebook or Twitter, or YouTube or something like that, we sure are glad that you stopped by to see us, but you are also invited to the fellowship in our live chat room. You can watch the same program there and enjoy the fellowship at pjnet.tv. JD, you have some cold weather. I don't think you're sending it to Florida, but you've got some brand new calves that have dropped out there, and them little scutters don't take the cold too well.
Yes, no, sir, they don't. I tell you, they got me a little worried here. I've been doing, Miss Diane and I've both been doing some heavy praying the last couple of days, and this morning I went out and there was a nice coating of ice on everything, and of course I used concrete washout to build up underneath the gates that I use to go into the pasture so that they're not muddy, because you're always traipsing through there on the UTV and things. What I didn't realize is that stuff turns in just slicker and snot on a doorknob. I was skidding around all morning every time I tried to go through a gate. I got to remember to take them short, choppy steps, and just a mess. But, yeah, it's cold when you got to water the cows with a sledgehammer, folks. Mm-hmm. And, you got to break through about 2 inches of ice to get down to water. Then you got to dip your hands in the water and throw the ice out, because it'll just refreeze in a few seconds. Mm-hmm. And, for the cows can come get a drink after they eat. And everything's a mess. When mud and manure freeze, it gets razor sharp. So you got to watch where you step at things, and it can be a mess. But no, my little calves are, I think the oldest is not quite a month yet. And it takes them about 6 weeks before their ruminant starts working. Their 4 chambers of the stomach, and they start cooking things in there. So they're all living on mother's milk, although a few of them are just starting to take a little bite of hay or come up and smell the sweet feed, something like that. After about 3 weeks, they'll start to do that. But not being that old yet, they can't really regulate their body temperature as well as a 1,500 pound mama cow. Mm-hmm. Because with them, I can feed them of an evening, and then their stomach's working and they're churning, and the furnace is working all night long with them. And you get up the next morning and you'll see a nice right along their back line. So from their withers to their tail head, you'll see a nice coating of frost right on the top of their back. But the rest of their body is all furry and fuzzy, and there's no frost, no ice or anything. And that just tells you that that's a pretty healthy cow that you're looking at when you can see that. But little calves, they don't regulate so well. So I'm doing all I can do to keep them in the barn and keep the wind off of them and give them hay to lay on. That's an expensive thing because there was no straw to buy.
Hmm.
Typically, you buy straw for like $2 a bale or something, but I'm paying $6 a bale for good hay, and of course I can't keep them from eating their bedding, so it it's there's always something to be a challenge. But I'll go out and check them after I get ready for bed. Then I'll go out and check, make sure they're all in there and tucked in for the night, and that's all I can do. That and pray, Coach.
Okay, well, JD, I'm a little bit distracted because there's something going wrong in the live feed. Normally,
Oh,
now's the time when you talk about your blog. So, would you mind talking about
okay.
your blog while I struggle here a minute?
Drive on, Coach. I'll be happy to. So this week's blog, folks, was entitled "Pushing Cattle," and it's funny because it's a lesson I've learned many years ago, working with Brahmins down in Central Florida. But it was also a lesson that I applied in the business world as I started to hire and manage different groups of people and things. I learned that it was sure much easier to lead people to do something than it was to push them to get something done. Especially when I worked with a bunch of ad hoc teams and we were working on large proposals and things. I would always tell them, folks, the only one getting paid to write this proposal is me. For everything else, it's just more crap on your plate you have to deal with every day. And so I tried to understand that and tried to work with them and support them as best I could. But Mr. Dan Boyd, and I think Dan is listening in this evening, he's a cowboy preacher that toured around the colonies or continental United States a few years back and preached at a lot of cowboy churches, which are something we have a lot of here in Northeast Texas. And I mean, my little town has three cowboy churches in it, you know. And
One for each
so
cowboy. Yeah.
Mr. Dan made a statement, and I want to say it's been about 3 months ago that he posted this on Facebook, and he said it's easier to lead cattle and most people than it is to push them. He said, just remember that Jesus leads while Satan pushes. And yeah, boy, I could sure relate to that. And if you've ever worked with cattle or sheep, and I know some of our viewers out there do, you understand exactly what he is saying. And from the time they're little calves and yearlings, and I first got them, I always worked with them. Sorry, my earpiece fell out. But I always worked with them to teach them good manners, if you will. And some of the things that I would do is I'd teach them to come when they're called.
Hmm.
And I would teach the cows to pay attention to me and not bull rush me when I've got the feed and I'm around the feeders. You know, just you have to stop and wait until I'm done and then you can eat. And teaching them how to behave like that thing sure does make life easier. And they tend to respect you a lot more. And but I think the biggest thing that I learned is to move slowly and with intention. So rather than and I see a lot of old cowboys do this. They'll want to work their cattle, or they'll want to get them in an enclosed area in a set of pens, and then sort them out, and then run them through an alley and through the tub and squeeze them in a squeeze chute and give them vaccinations or attend to them other ways. And they'll do these things, Coach, and they'll hoop and holler and wave their hands and rush around. And the cows just put it in beef or boogie. I mean, it's kind of like trying to herd a bunch of cats. They just go all the different directions because they're confused and they don't know what to do with. And I knew that it shouldn't be that hard. And I remember watching the 4-H folks
Hmm.
and things. And Mr. Ben will probably have something to say on this. But I would watch the exhibitors with the livestock shows at the county fairs and things. And they'd bring in their groomed and manicured steer or heifer, and they'd be very calm, very easy. They walked in a certain way and things, and they could stage or set the animal and things so that it showed its best, so you can see its frame and everything. And I'm going, well, doesn't that just make more sense? Just be calm and easy with these animals rather than trying to push them and impose your will upon them. Let them think they're leading the way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same way we're getting them into a trailer. Some guys will, the first thing they grab is the hot shot. Let me put 10,000 volts up your backside and
Mm-hmm.
I'll get you on that trailer. It's a whole lot easier if you just hold a cube up at the front of the trailer and say, come on, Elsie, get on up here. She'll climb right up because she knows she's going to get that cube. And so, there's a difference between leading and pushing somebody to do something or being a very demanding boss. And that's kind of what I talked about. But when my friend Mr. Dan made that comment several months ago, I thought about that. Man, that goes back 2,000 years. Christ told us the same thing in Matthew when he was talking to the guys in Matthew 11:29. I think he said, take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I'm gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. So what I took from that and I applied to my cattle is rather than pushing and demanding and squeezing them and putting a lot of pressure on them and things, come alongside them, walk beside them. And that's exactly what Christ does with us, right? He came down from heaven and he walks beside us in our walk. And I thought, geez, wouldn't it be nice if we did the same thing with new Christians when they first found their salvation and started to take those baby steps, if you will, in faith? Wouldn't it be nice if we yoked ourselves to them and we guided them and we helped them along in the same way my adopted dad did for me, right? I was trying to be an auto mechanic, and that's not an easy thing to learn necessarily, but he was a very patient teacher, and if you mess up, it's okay. Let's go back and figure out where we messed up and correct that so we can move forward. And those things really went way beyond teaching me how to repair cars and how to overhaul engines and do the things like that. They taught me how to be a son, taught me how to be a man, and take responsibility for my actions. Later, they taught me to be the best husband that I could be. And that's something I'm still working on. I think we all are. But, and to be a good father, you take that and you take that leadership, the best that you see in leadership. And I likened it to my work days, Coach. I used to tell everybody that I'd hire, I'd tell them two things. At first, I'd tell them I'm the worst SOB you're ever going to work for in your life. Just expect it. And second thing I'd tell them is I will never ask you to do anything that I'm not willing to do myself. And
well, I read that line. I read that line with great interest, JD, because it's a good, it's a good start. But I'll raise the bar for you because I did the same thing.
Good.
But I went further. I will not ask you to do something that I haven't already done 100 times. Okay. I find it odd that companies will place people in supervisory positions over a task that they have never performed. That blows my fuses. And the advantage, I think, is one, not only do you earn their respect, but when they come back and say, well, it took me 3 hours. No, it doesn't take 3 hours. I know how long it takes. So, now it may have taken 4 hours, but you can weed out the fiction from the truth when you've actually done it. But the principle is still the same. The principle and the biblical principles, by the way, even if you're not a believer, the principles are still good. You might want to check into that. Because, the thing that when you mention Jesus, wants us to yoke ourselves to him, I find it interesting that he says his yoke is light. Now, so many Christians they want it to read, "Oh, there is no yoke. There are no boundaries. There is no limitations. Nothing's hard. Everything's easy. I'll do everything for you. Just rub the genie bottle and God will pop out and whoom, fix all your problems." No,
Nothing is free.
He says his yoke is light. He doesn't say there isn't one.
Right. So very true. And and horses. The best team of horses learn to pull together. They adapt to each other so that they work in unison. And we do the same thing with our teams, and we should be doing the same thing within our churches and our families, shouldn't we, Coach? Everybody
Absolutely.
work towards that common goal and use each other's strengths to build upon those, and you're going to get there a lot easier and a lot faster.
It pays to work together. For some reason, I'm getting the image of this double-propped plane back in the old days of piston engines. And when you get up there to cruising altitude, those engines will go wah, 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 back and forth. Well, that's because they're not together. And you can, once you sync them up, there's no wobbling in their sound.
No,
but back,
exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Rowing is one of the better ones. If you've got both oars in the water on both sides, it works a lot better.
Very true. Very true.
You'll go straight.
And motorcycles, they used to have two carburetors, and you had to balance the carburetors just right. Yes.
Yeah,
exactly.
I had, it had. I'm just curious. I'm really detouring this picture behind me. I'm
Yes.
starting. That's not you.
That is not me. That's just a young lady I was able to get a picture of at a feedlot, believe it or not. But as she was moving her cows, they just kind of followed right along behind her. And I said, "There you go." So I honestly, I know her first name, but I don't even know her last name. Coach, just somebody at a feedlot that I met at a local feedlot, and they just her cows would just follow her. It's just all in how you condition them, all in how you raise them, Coach. Yeah,
I made some comments on your blog, and you took issue with some of it to some
I
extent.
didn't take issue with it, Coach.
Well,
We have a different view of one item.
trying to make this
Go ahead.
dramatic, make people think it's going to be interesting.
Okay.
I said you can't lead beyond where you're at,
Right.
and you said,
I respectfully disagree. You can lead beyond where you're at, and I gave an example. I think in my comments is we may be working towards some future goal, but I can come alongside you and we'll both get there together. So
we can walk together toward a common
lead
goal.
You along the way.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't disagree with that, but that gets back to the point I made earlier. When you are telling people, when you're supervising people to do a task you've never done, it's I don't like that model. And the other comment that I made is I read it somewhere. It had never dawned upon me, but if you're pushing, by definition, you're not leading. You're behind.
You're behind. That's right. Yes, sir. And that's I love that point. You are definitely bringing up the rear. And what happens when you pushing like that and you're pushing somebody else? You can't see what's ahead of them, right? Because they're blocking your view.
Yeah, that's poor leadership. I love the illustration you gave, the real life. You've got ranch handlers that get the hot shot and poke them in the hiney, and you can get them to scoot up on that trailer. But if you get up on the trailer, lead, and get them to come to you, or like this young lady behind me, if you have a style of leadership that puts you in front, it seems to me to lead, you would need to be in front. That's what lead means, isn't it? When we say the leader of the race, I think that implies that they're ahead of the pack.
exactly, Coach. And of course, like your other point too about pushing a rope. That ain't easy, and boy, I've tried that a lot of times in my life.
Well,
Yeah.
I learned that I was riding. My father-in-law was a deputy, and occasionally he'd pick me up and we'd ride at night. And it was dark, and there was this guy on the side of the road, no visible means of support, but he was just basically walking down the road. No law against that. We wouldn't have stopped except that he was pulling this chain. I mean, it's one of those heavy, chain, the kind. I'm not talking about a dog leash chain. I'm talking about one of them chains,
Sure, a log chain, yeah.
Yeah, so we stopped and just checked, we hadn't done anything wrong. But my father-in-law asked him, said, well, why are you pulling that chain? Man said, you ever tried to push one?
That's a fact. That's a fact, yeah. And, yeah.
You meet all kinds out there on the road.
Yes, sir. We use that term pushing a rope a lot around here. You're keep trying to do something and it doesn't work, and we can get into Einstein's, definition of insanity and things. But, you keep trying it and it doesn't work. So you got to try it, take it from a different direction. And we just look at you and go, boy, you're pushing the rope. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Now, right now in Texas, you could push a rope. It'd be so stiff.
Yes.
Let's go back to the chain illustration. Chains are not solid, and they're used for some very rigid tasks. But the thing about a chain is that they are linked forward and they are linked backwards, and they are at a right angle too. They're not in the same alignment with the links. They're all at 90 degrees basically when they're taught. As Christians, we need to be linked forward to a mentor who's been there, done that. But we better also be linked backwards to someone who we're bringing along.
Those coming behind us. That's exactly right, Coach. That is such an important point, and I think that gets lost in a lot of churches today. Is yes, it's easy to get comfortable with your little peer group or your little clique, if we want to use that vernacular. But we need to be looking ahead at who's the shepherd, who's leading us, right? Who's directing us, and that needs to make sure that's Christ and not your pastor, right? Because he can lead you right over the cliff. But we also need to make sure that we're looking behind us to make sure they're still with us. When I was in the military, Coach, we walked. We had 3 positions that were paramount to our success as a unit. They were point, and point was the fella out front. He was blazing the trail. He was the one that was watching for potential ambush and things like that. There was slack, and slack was a person directly behind the point man. And I walked slack a lot because I carried a 40 millimeter grenade with buckshot in it, below the M16 when I was part of a heavy team. And whichever way my point person fell, whatever direction that was, I just started lobbing in double-out buckshot just as fast as I could because something was there, Yeah. And I might not see it, but he knew that I had his back and I had him covered. And then the last person in the column or in the group was the person that we called drag. And dragged brought up the rear, just as the name would imply. But he was an important part because what happens when they circle around behind you, Coach? Yeah. And so those 3 were 3 integral positions on a fire team that we all understood, and we all could interchange and swap out and play any of those roles.
I was going to say, you need to rotate that around a little bit.
Sir, yes, exactly. Because point can sure dwell on a person after a few hours of that in the bush. But
Yeah,
anyway, Coach, I digressed. I'm sorry.
there's tripwires out there. Well, I'm thinking, of units, that work we're riding as a group as a motorcycle. When you're going to pass, okay, what you do is the guy at the end moves over in the lane. That prevents cars from getting in the middle of us, and then we all shift over, and then we all pass, and then we get back in the right lane.
Okay.
Yeah, because you can get scattered out when you get about 20, 30, 40 motorcycles traveling, and you got to stay. So you got your riding shotgun, the guy in the back, but then you've got the point. Then there's everybody else in the middle. I don't know what that has to do with any spiritual point, but nonetheless, we have. I was talking to somebody today about blogs, and not today, but this week. And they said that the day of the blog is gone, that it's over. And I know too many people like yourself, JD, that have been blogging faithfully over the years. Do you feel that way at all?
No, sir. I don't think the blog has lost its appeal. Just like that's like saying the book has lost its appeal. Nobody wants to read; they want to listen to everything these days. Podcasts is a new medium. Vlogging or video blogs, as they call it, I think they call it a vlog, Coach.
Yeah, I can never pronounce it right.
That's been attempted and tried a few times, but it's funny because there's always something new and exciting and a new whim. There's some great podcasts out there, especially for people that's got a nice golden voice. Del Didway or our buddy Ken Edwards both have wonderful podcasts that they put out. Miss Rachel does a nice video cast or vlog where she interviews people and does things like that. I'm too much of a foghorn leghorn on acid, Coach. I don't have the right voice for that. It's kind of like saying I've got a face for radio and it just doesn't work. So I'll stick to the medium that I'm comfortable with until God leads me elsewhere. And I enjoy the blog part because that allows me to hone my writing craft while at the same time not waiting to get published for years. Sometimes it seems like it can be a long way because I'm basically self-publishing every week. And so I can do that, and that allows me great flexibility to change. This week I changed what I'm actually going to blog about next week because something came up and nope, this is important. I need to do this. So I have that flexibility. I can adapt with the blog. With the podcast, you got to get it out there. You got to get it perfect, and it takes 2 or 3 takes. You never see, and Miss Irene kind of touched on it in the earlier program tonight. You don't see all the work that happens behind the blog. You don't see, we throw up on paper and then we let it sit there for a couple of days and ferment. And then we come back and we look at it with fresh eyes. He goes, oh my God, put away the crayons and let's edit this and clean it up so that it reads a lot better when it goes out than it was in the first draft form. But
speaking of,
no, I'm going to continue blogging until God tells me not to, Coach.
Yeah, I would agree, and it's you make several good points. Now, we're going to have to let you get out of here because you've got something you're going to do, as I understand, as soon as you get off the air.
Yes, sir. I've got a cherry pie cooling. That's in lieu of birthday cake for my Miss Diane. So we're going to go enjoy a nice piece of cherry pie and probably have some ice cream on top, and then I think it's probably bedtime for Bonzo. But before I do that, I'll go make one more night check on the cows out in the barn, make sure everybody's safe and tucked in for the night.
All right. Well, JD, it's always good chatting with you, and hope those cattle are warm and do all you can for them, and I know you will, and may God bless your farm, your ranch, your work, your ministry, your blog, and your time here with us. We
Thank
appreciate
you,
it.
everybody, for hanging in with us tonight.
All right. Well, folks, that was J.D. Wininger, and he appears every Thursday night about this time. There is the view straight overhead. I mean, straight overhead. I mean, you can see it all right there, the PJNet broadcast facilities. You can even see right over there, those orange dots that you're seeing are the tops of the Gatorade bottles that I go through. I don't throw away the bottles, folks, because, man, those make good, I find I recycle them in a unique kind of way. What a good time it's been tonight. Appreciate everybody in the chat room. Well, this wraps it up for me anyway this week. But that doesn't mean that PJNet won't be here tomorrow night. We very much will be. Starting about 9 o'clock, Steve Hazards takes the controls of all this ship. He captains it. About 9 Eastern, he'll play a lot of. He does kind of some jazz, but sometimes he throws in some retro. You never know. So we just kind of let our hair down and just kind of party and chat. But that's all the warm up. See, that's the warm up, because then at 10 o'clock he uncorks my perspective and comment. And boy, it's funny, because there may be a few of us here from 9 to 10, but come 10 o'clock, boy, you can hear that thing going. The people are filing in the chat room. So if you want to get a week's worth of current events from a scriptural and Christian perspective, I would urge you to get your news from Hazards 4 on Friday night right here at pjnet.tv. That starts around 10. You never know exactly, because he does this and YouTube has to, what they call, process it. And that sometimes is 3 or 4 minutes. Sometimes that's 20, 30 minutes. You just don't know. It's kind of like when you drop a letter in a mail in the mailbox. I sent it. I don't know when it's going to get there. But it's been a great week, and we look forward. We've got some openings next week, and I know that we've got some new first-time guests coming our way. You can always go to pjnet.tv, and there's a tab on there called Schedule, and I'm going to look at it right now. And it says next week, we got a bunch. Go check it out. It's not updated yet, but we do have some new guests coming on, if I'm reading this right. Of course, I may not have refreshed my screen. This little tablet thing's kind of neat. All right, well, folks, good. It's been great. It's been great, and I appreciate each one of you, especially those of you who attend the live chat room. Well, I'm going to make some highlights videos. And before I leave, I would like to leave you with a challenge. Here's the challenge, in the form of 2 questions. First, what is the boldest thing that you've ever done for Jesus Christ? And second, when was that? I hope none of us will be satisfied with either answer.